Welcome, everybody, the Irish Writers for Palestine, Belfast. Yeah. So I'm going to stick to this script here because who knows where it could end up. So this is the first in a series of readings happening across Ireland over the course of the next 2 weeks. Writers from Belfast, Dublin, Cork and Galway have come together to read and speak, and most importantly, to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. All proceeds from these events will go to medical aid for Palestinians. We hope to raise a lot of money, both from ticket sales and from our book and art stalls out the front. We have Helen McDonald from Skullduggery out there, selling artwork. Andrew Comiskey from No Alibis, doing God's work, selling books. We've also, and some Palestinian literature and translation as well. And there's also someone, Stephen, is going to be going around the room selling raffle tickets. If he hasn't already found you, he will. He will get you. So keep an eye out. The raffle's class. There's artwork by Ray Collective on the go, prints from Rob Hilkin, Joanne Coates, vouchers for the Sunflower Bar, she paints, and just loads of other good stuff as well. There's a signed limited edition copy of Close to Home by Michael Magee. It's apparently a very good book. I encourage you all to donate and do what you can. So the format of these events is simple. For Belfast, we have 8 readers. Each reader has been asked to read either an extract of their own work or an extract from a Palestinian writer in translation, or they can read something that they feel speaks to this particular moment. In that sense, the brief is loose, the source texts vary widely, but literature, as we all know, has a knack for creating resonances. For the Palestinian writer, the writer who lives within a system that is working to erase their existence from the memory of history, any attempt to articulate a conscious identity, whether it's through a poem or a short story, becomes an act of resistance. As Roland Barthes says, God help me for quoting him, writing is an ambiguous reality. It arises from a confrontation of the writer with the society of their time. It's no coincidence then that the poetry of resistance emerged when it did during the 1950s and 60s, when the Palestinian people were confronted with a new reality, one in which they had suddenly become refugees in their own land. This reality remains unchanged. As the great Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish states, the Nakba is not a memory. It is an ongoing uprooting. It continues because the occupation continues, and the continued occupation means continued war. This war that Israel wages against us is not a war to defend its existence, but a war to obliterate ours. That's what we've borne witness to during the last 8 weeks, an obliteration. It begs the question then, what use is literature when confronted with such unrelenting violence? What is literature's function in the face of ethnic cleansing, collective punishment, and genocidal war crimes? And why should we turn to literature in this moment? The best answer I have for this, once again, comes from Mahmoud Darwish. He said that being Palestinian is not a slogan. It is not a profession. The Palestinian is a human being, a tormented human being who has daily questions, national and existential, who has a love story, who contemplates a flower and an open window to the unknown, who has a metaphysical fear and an inner world utterly resistant to occupation. Literature presents that inner world to us. It is the meeting place between writer and reader. It bridges the gap between who we are and what we think we know. And most importantly, it allows us to, as Darwish says, make history less mythological, to place the myth within its proper metaphorical place and to transform us from victims of history into partners of humanizing history. We therefore have a responsibility as writers or artists or musicians to use whatever platforms we have to articulate and preserve that history and to pick up the mantle laid down by our Palestinian brothers and sisters and resist. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for tuning into the live screen, all 12 of you. And in the green room next door. No, I hope you all enjoy the event. Basically, I'm just going to introduce the readers in the order they're going to read. They're going to come up and read, and then we're going to have some music. So we're going to have first readings from Anna Burns, Stephen Sexton, Wendy Erskine. Farrah Koutteineh is going to give a presentation, and then Arborist is going to play some tunes. Thank you all for coming and enjoy the event.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to read something that's taken from a longer piece of my own writing. It's the first of a series of incidents that happened to me over 30 years ago, which changed me and my attitude to life and to others. I chose it for this evening because it's about how someone can contribute to another person's pain, even if they didn't initially cause it. One late afternoon in 1990, when I was working as a copy taker at the Independent in London, a man rang up and asked if he might give over an obituary. I said the usual, "Yeah, sure. Is it ordered? What's your name? What's the catchline?" That last was my own thinking, and more to the point on feeling, who's the dead guy? I still can't get over that I put it like that. But that's the point and the reason I am writing this. Up until that particular phone call, that particular day, I didn't know I was being insensitive. I didn't know sensitive. I didn't know shit. Especially as to emotions, especially emotions around death. Thing was, I was about to be handed a lesson from the universe about that. And it started with this man that day giving me the 3 pieces of preliminary information I had asked for. Then, headset on head, fingers at the keyboard, all ready, all steady. I opened my mouth and actually think I said, "Go." Poor man, he went. He began to dictate his copy, which was his obituary of someone or other, with my going, "Yes, okay, yeah," to hurry him along. This was because he had started off in the acceptable manner, as in the usual summary bio of what was later to come in detail, then giving the detail as in paragraph. So-and-so, something, 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 was born in the year something, something, stop. When she was something, something, she something, something, open bracket, something, close bracket, stop. When so-and-so was 9, comma, so-and-so senior said of her, comma, open quotes, something, something, stop, close quotes. Then war came, stop, new paragraph, and so on. There had been the expected beginning, but then this man mysteriously began to stumble, become inarticulate, pause, and then stop. It was an obituary of a woman I had never heard of. That wasn't unusual. I hadn't heard of many of the subjects whose obituaries I took. Although I worked as a copy taker, typing all sorts of material at many of the newspapers in London, and had done this previously from the age of 17 in Belfast, I never read any of them. Eventually, I sorted this contradiction in me by stopping work in all of them, not much further down the line. So this man was okay in his dictation for about 3 or 4 sentences. Then he had his trouble. With my fingers poised and impatient, I frowned. What was going on? What's he doing? Why has he stopped? There were pauses, followed by the odd incoherent word. then more pauses, then great problems with sniffing and swallowing. And yes, definitely there was difficulty playing itself out on the line. On I typed, then I waited, then I typed, then I waited, looking at the clock, at the whiteboard underneath the clock with numbers to be rang, international war stories to be got, coming up to deadlines, all phones ringing, the whole place heaving. God forgive me, I found some more. A few more broken phrases on from him in this fashion, and I'm thinking, that's it, I'm getting rid of him. He doesn't have his act together. And as I was about to do so, he apologised. Forgive me, I'm sorry, he said. This is so very difficult. She was my aunt, you see. She was my aunt. I'm sorry to say I didn't see. I didn't know what this man was talking about. What could he mean by telling me this woman was his aunt? By now it was evident, even to me, that he was beyond distressed. About what, though, I couldn't understand. He was polite, and I was perplexed, puzzled by his emotional state. Without any understanding, I was witnessing an emotional state, confused too by his apologies and by his continuing to tell me this woman was his aunt. It was a long piece, as obituaries were, and he stumbled and said sorry his way through all of it, with my wondering what on earth was happening, before at last, something furious and galvanic grabbed me by the scruff and shook the life out of me until I was forced to see with shock and with shame what this man was about. My shock was at how long it had taken me to realise that this voice in my ear was sad because this piece, all those words I didn't care about, a birth, a life, a death, a stranger, meant something to this person, and that he was coming from grief over his aunt, whom he had loved, who was dead. The shame I was feeling was about his noticing, how could he not, my callousness and lack of understanding of anything that mattered, but politely not commenting upon it, and instead continuing to be kind to me in spite of his grief at this time. When next he apologised for his sorrow, I blurted over the office, "Oh no, don't you say sorry. It's not for you to be sorry. I'm the one who's sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I see now why you're saying it, but don't say it. Don't you say sorry." And yes, I would have shown more delicacy towards this man had I not thrown myself into that "I see now why" sentence. But I did say it because I did see it, and I would forever see it. Either he didn't hear, which of course he did, or else he chose not to respond. "Do you want to leave it for a bit? Have a wee rest or something? Then I'll ring you back," I offered. Now that I knew, I wanted to do something, give him something, make up for my bluntness. No, he answered, "I'll finish. We're nearly there now." I noticed that generously he had included me in his brave delivery of the obituary when I hadn't deserved to be generously so included, when I hadn't understood a single thing to be included. But he carried on, this time his voice stronger, with my now aware of all I hadn't noticed, experiencing unfamiliar sensations of wanting to cry as well. I say as well, for it also dawned on me that the strange sniffings and chokings coming down the line almost the whole way through this dictation had been this man crying, with again my not realising. But how could I have realised? With all my own ungrieved grief, and my repressed anger, and my repressed hatred, and especially my great fear, how could this man's emotional reality have made the least impact on me then? Until it did. Thank you for listening.
Good evening.
I'll read three poems by a Palestinian poet, Musab Abu Toha. Before I do, may I just thank, as I'm sure you would like to thank, the passionate, dedicated work of the organisers of this event and many other events. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here. So, three poems. First, a little bit of biography. Musab Abu Toha is a Palestinian poet, short story writer, and essayist from Gaza. Abu Toha is the author of Things You Might Find Hidden in My Ear, Poems from Gaza, published by City Lights, which won a 2022 Palestine Book Award. Abu Toha is the founder of the Edward Said Library, and from 2019 to 2020, he was a visiting poet and librarian in residence at Harvard University. On the 19th of November, Abu Toha and his family were fleeing to southern Gaza. The poet, his wife, and his three young children were traveling to Rafah, where they hoped to cross into Egypt. Because one of his children is an American citizen, the American embassy sent him and his family to travel through the Rafah crossing, having assured them safe passage. At the checkpoint, he was separated from his wife and family by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, which interrogated and beat him. He has since been released. On the 24th of November, on Twitter, he said this: "I'm safe, but still have pain in my nose and teeth after being beaten by Israeli army. I gave them all my family's passports, including my American son's, but they didn't return anything. Also my clothes and my children's were taken and not returned to me. No wallet, money, credit cards." We read these poems and share them in solidarity and respect for Musab. So three poems. The first of which you'll hear, I think, a sarcastic and frustrated voice. My grandfather was a terrorist. My grandfather was a terrorist. He tended to his field, watered the roses in the courtyard, smoked cigarettes with grandmother on the yellow beach, lying there like a prayer rug. My grandfather was a terrorist. He picked oranges and lemons, went fishing with brothers until noon, sang a comforting song en route to the farriers with his piebald horse. My grandfather was a terrorist. He made a cup of tea with milk, sat on his verdant land as soft as silk. My grandfather was a terrorist. He departed his house, leaving it for the coming guests, left some water on the table, his best, lest the guests die of thirsts after their conquest. My grandfather was a terrorist. He walked to the closest safe town, empty as the sullen sky, vacant as a deserted tent, dark as a starless night. My grandfather was a terrorist. My grandfather was a man, a breadwinner for 10, whose luxury was to have a tent with a blue UN flag set on the rusting pole on the beach next to a cemetery. And a poem that is the title poem from his poetry collection, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, which is given for Alicia M. Cannell, MD. When you open my ear, touch it gently. My mother's voice lingers somewhere inside. Her voice is the echo that helps me recover equilibrium when I feel dizzy during my attentiveness. You may encounter songs in Arabic, poems in English I recite to myself, or a song I chant to the chirping birds in our backyard. When you stitch the cut, don't forget to put all these back in my ear. Put them back in order, as you would do with the books on your shelf. The drone's buzzing sound, the roar of an F-16, the screams of bombs falling on houses, on fields, and on bodies, of rockets flying away, rid my tiny ear canal of them all. Spray the perfume of your smiles on the incision. Inject the song of life into my veins to wake me up. Gently beat the drum so my mind may dance with yours, my doctor, day and night. And one more poem from Musab. On Gaza seashore. I convince myself that a palm tree never bends, nor do its dates rot. I imagine the sky only occupied by birds and swollen clouds. I walk alone along the beach and never fear getting drenched by the cold, silent waves. Should you find me asleep, be sure I am either dreaming of roses and doves or staring into the void beneath me. I will dress in my rosy suit and walk to the port, even though I know no ship is arriving. My hope is that you will come flying to me on your tireless wings. I will collect seashells and pebbles to build a house for us on the beach until you come. I don't know how many houses I will have built before you come. I'm afraid I will rebuild Gaza by then. Thanks, Musab.
Hi there. I'm not going to read a poem or a piece of literature, but I'm going to read a news story, a human interest story, I suppose you could say, written by Yusuf Dawas. It appeared in August 2023 in the Palestine Chronicle and was contributed to them by the We Are Not Numbers collective. We Are Not Numbers is an organisation that develops the communication skills of Palestinian young people, coaching them so that they can share the very particular and very human stories behind the numbers in the news. So, kidney transplant and rebirth, a Palestinian love story, August 2023. Anan Sadat is a 30-year-old dentist from the Gaza Strip. He's married to Rima Abu Ada, 27. Though the couple now has a renewed sense of hope for their future, things were difficult, in fact, very difficult in recent years. Anan and Rima got married in 2018. 3 years later, the couple faced a challenge. They wanted to conceive a child but couldn't. So, in 2021, they resorted to a specialised hospital for in vitro fertilisation. During the egg retrieval procedure, however, Rima developed a severe infection caused by unsterilised equipment, resulting in kidney failure. The young woman was transferred to a hospital in the West Bank city of Al-Khalil, Hebron, where she spent 24 days in the intensive care unit. Doctors informed Anan that his wife would require regular dialysis to survive. Hard times either bring us together or break us apart. For the young couple, it was the former, not the latter. Anan stepped up to become Rima's pillar of support. The couple returned to Gaza, where Anan stopped practicing dentistry to entirely focus on Rima's needs. He cared for her during the initial 3-month treatment period, accompanying her through the dialysis sessions 3 times a week. We used to go to dialysis at 10 p.m. and finish at 2 in the morning, sometimes 3 or 4, Anan said. Aside from his wife's suffering, Anan had also to deal with financial strain and mounting debts. He also wanted to donate his own kidney, but the procedure required outside expertise not available in Gaza. Rima at first rejected Anan's offer, then accepted for her sake and the sake of his new family. In May 2022, the couple eventually travelled to Egypt for the transplant surgery. I was no longer working, Therefore, I had no source of income at the time, Annan told us. I borrowed money from my in-laws, my sister, my family. Even my married sister sold their gold obtained as marriage gifts so that I could travel with my wife for her treatment. But after a month in Egypt, more complications followed. The couple had no tissue matching, which is required by Egyptian medical regulations for kidney transplants. When they returned to Gaza, Annan and Rima felt truly defeated. But hope was quickly rekindled when they met the head of the kidney transplant department at Al-Shifa Hospital. The doctor said that despite the lack of tissue matching, the kidney transplant was still possible with the help of a visiting medical delegation. The first delegation, coming from Jordan, was prevented from entering Gaza. However, on July the 13th, 2023, Annan and Rima finally underwent the delicate surgery, and it was a success. And following the successful surgery, Annan can breathe a sigh of relief. For Rima and Annan, the transplant was comparable to a rebirth. Rima, however, still longs to become a mother. She told the Palestine Chronicle that she hopes that one day she will hold her baby in her arms. Considering everything that Rima and Annan have been through, such hope is maybe possible. The young man, Yosef Dawas, who wrote this story, was part of the We Are Not Numbers collective, who, as I was saying, produced the human stories behind the news, like the one I've just read about this couple, kidney dialysis, trying to have a baby. Yosef Dawas is described as a joyful guy. On his way to university, his talk with his friend was about his cats and about his favourite Algerian writers. He was killed along with several members of his family in the northern town of Beit Lahai on Saturday, October the 14th. Yosef was studying to be a psychoanalyst and was interested in economics and politics, and he was also learning the guitar. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to start by saying thank you to everyone who came out today, and it's important to remember in times like this that resistance takes many forms, which include music, to film, to writing, to the authors, the artists who also uphold the struggle. I actually spoke here at the Black Box yesterday, and sorry for any repetition. But what I didn't start with was a poem, an insert I was asked to write for a project called Picturing Palestine a few months ago. So I just thought I would start with this poem / insert. Okay. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, as were my Palestinian ancestors over 1,000 years before me. I took my very first steps on the old cobbled streets of Jerusalem's old city. I grew up playing under my grandmother's grapevines, harvesting our olive trees in golden Palestinian autumns, the same olive trees my ancestors planted centuries ago. I grew up sipping maramiya, which is a tea with sage, in the evenings listening to my relatives talking about politics and having to understand that we were inferior in the land we were rooted in, not because we didn't belong there, not because we aren't rooted from there, but because we are indigenous to here in the midst of an illegal settler colonial siege. I grew up hearing the stories of how my communist ancestors worked tirelessly to purchase land ownership of over 1/3 of all of Jerusalem's property from colonial and mandate elites. And when they purchased all that they could, they gave all of it back to our community as homes for the homeless, orphanages for orphans, and for museums of Palestinian history. I grew up being told the stories of my fearless elders who had protected Jerusalem until their last breath against Zionist terrorist groups. I grew up to see all that my ancestors worked for our community was either stolen or destroyed by Zionist terrorist groups, which later became the Israeli government. Our history, Our history, our ancestors, our very existence is being erased from Jerusalem, is being erased from Palestine. That's why seeing what's happening today in Gaza, in Silwan, in Beita, in Lifta, in Jerusalem is heartbreaking. And what keeps me going is knowing that one day we will decolonize Palestine. We will liberate our people, and we will have a land for our people for the first time in our lives, decolonized. We will know what freedom feels like, and we will see what justice is. That was the end of the insert. I'm just going to go into a few slides. So similarly to yesterday, I struggled to plan and write out what I was going to say at these events. Since October 7th, words have really failed me. And also, I feel like my whole life as a Palestinian, I've always tried to articulate the struggle in a way for which I can make people try to understand the dispossession, the colonization, and the experience of that. And for me, there's no other way that I can explain it than from a personal perspective and from my family's perspective, which will explain the slides after this. So what I wanted to start with as well is we were raised as Palestinians being told the story of the Nakba as children, the beginning of our genocide in 1948, the mass ethnic cleansing, colonization, and destruction of our country, the destruction of everything we know as Palestinians. In 1948, Palestinians were terrorized beyond human comprehension. We were mass raped, we were massacred by Zionist terrorist groups. Tens of thousands of Palestinians were murdered, nearly 1 million were displaced, over 650 Palestinian towns and villages were destroyed in order to create the Israeli settler colony on the rubble of our villages and on the unmarked mass graves of our people and my ancestors that they massacred in order to create Israel. And just on Sunday, the numbers of Palestinians murdered since October 7th surpassed that of the 1948 Nakba. On Sunday, the number of Palestinians displaced in Gaza surpassed that of the 1948 Nakba. In just 54 days, the darkest chapter of our history proved to not be history, but our ongoing nightmare. I wanted to very quickly go through a few slides to kind of articulate a lot of what Palestinians are feeling right now and our experience as Palestinians. So my whole life, and indeed the whole life of every Palestinian, has, I can almost guarantee, has been spent trying to rehumanize us, to rehumanize our families, rehumanize our people, trying to convince people we deserve freedom, try and convince people that we have a right to live in freedom. And right now we are trying to convince the world again we deserve life and freedom, with the alternative being all-out genocide. So my name is Farrah. I'm originally Palestinian from Jerusalem. My family can trace our heritage and our history back on paper over 1,000 years to Jerusalem, but we obviously know it goes back a lot further than that. Palestine itself has a rich history dating back over 4,000 years. And actually, speaking of Jerusalem as well, Jerusalem, which is the capital of Palestine, has been Palestinian longer than London has been English. And a few years ago, I created something called Key 48, which is on the slides behind me. And it's basically an initiative calling for the Palestinian right of return. There are over 7 million Palestinian refugees waiting to return. And due to the Nakba, a vast majority of my family are also refugees now, whilst a few who survived the Nakba remain in Palestine. My family live under Israeli apartheid. Within 48 Palestine live under occupation in the West Bank, and also live in exile. So do I just click this? Okay, perfect. Okay. So this is a picture of me and my dad in Jerusalem. I'm not going to say how many years ago, but quite a while ago. And this is a picture right on a hilltop where we can see all of Jerusalem. I'm originally from the old city of Jerusalem, which, if a few of you already know what's kind of going on in Jerusalem, it's a mass ethnic cleansing campaign and colonization campaign. Israel essentially wants to ethnically cleanse all of Jerusalem, as it does with all of Palestine, but specifically Jerusalem, as it was a colonial saying in the start of the Nakba that David Ben-Gurion, one of the chief terrorists and the Zionist terrorist groups, Erskine and Haganah and Stern, said that once they had conquered Jerusalem, they had conquered all of Palestine. So my family today live, are one of the last Palestinian families to live in the Old City. Every time I go back, another Palestinian family has been expelled from their home, has had their home stolen by Israeli soldiers. My house, my family's home in Palestine, it's hard to articulate. We live within a prison, within of occupation, but then also our home has become a prison because we choose to remain where we've always lived. The windows have bars on them. Our doors, there's about 3 doors to get to the main door, and there's about 10 bolts on every door as well to stop settlers stealing our home. And also as well, Israel has a law which is called the Land Absentee Law, which they actually passed pretty quickly after they formed as a settler colony, which means that any home that's empty, by empty, it just means maybe someone's popped out to get something, then Israeli soldiers and police can then possess that house. So what you'll often find is for our house as well, we always have to have 2 people in the house at all times, which might not seem maybe big of an issue, but during, funerals and other things as well, it's, yeah. So originally from the Old City, these are just, I'm not sure why that one's a bit blurry. But these are a few pictures of the Old City of Jerusalem. The Old City of Jerusalem is where Al-Aqsa Mosque is, the Holy Sepulchre, churches where it's believed Jesus is buried, and is where the Western Wall is. It's religiously significant for all 3 religions. And a few years ago, a few cousins of mine who are living in the diaspora, who aren't allowed to return to Palestine, decided to do a deep kind of historical history research on our family. And we found that we are direct descendants of someone called Majid al-Din Hanbali, who was born in 1456, and this is his grave today in Jerusalem. We're direct descendants of Hanbali family. And this is his grave today in Jerusalem, and this was an old picture of his grave from a few centuries ago. Actually, more recently, Israel tried to remove his grave in order to create a settler road. However, they're still in the process of trying to do that. And Majid al-Din was also a very well-known Palestinian scholar. He documented the history of Jerusalem, and his books to this day remain a vital historic resource, and they're actually placed, his writings and his works on Jerusalem are placed in libraries and museums in London, Cairo, Vienna, and Paris. I actually, a few years ago, once in London, tried to find these books and resources in London, and of all places, they were in the British Museum. Yeah, where nothing's British, yeah. I actually found a few of his works because he was documenting even from then the deep, rich cultural connections of Palestinians in Jerusalem. Just wanted to say as well, as Palestinians, as an indigenous native people, we don't view land in a capitalist sense. We don't view land in a way of ownership. We view land that we're the custodians and the guardians of that land, that we take care of it for the next generation. We don't have this capitalist sense of ownership of land. And also within the research that my cousins did when they found out we're related to Majid al-Din, they also found that we actually knew this as a family because it wasn't that long ago. It was in 1948. We knew this as a family anyway, but it got confirmed that 18 members of my family, so in 1948, when Zionist terrorist groups were invading Jerusalem, they were heavily armed, they were ethnically cleansing Jerusalem, they were brutally murdering any Palestinian in sight. My family and a few other Palestinian families chose to go and protect a place, a museum with all of our history and artifacts, Palestinian history and artifacts were placed. They were placed in a building and they were being taken care of, and my family chose to go and defend that because there was word that Israeli, at that time, Zionist terrorist groups were going to try to steal them. And a Zionist terrorist group by the name of Haganah, they had bombed and they had essentially committed a massacre of all those Palestinian families trying to defend our history and our artifacts. They murdered 18 members of my family in that process. They actually destroyed a lot of the artifacts in that building, and then they stepped over the dead bodies of my family and other families, and then stole and looted the rest that was in there, that wasn't destroyed, and they placed it in this museum, which is called the Rockefeller Museum. It really sounds indigenous, doesn't it? The Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem. And now it's under the guise that this is an Israeli history museum with those looted artifacts. These are just a few old pictures of my family as well. I think it's important to really contextualize. We're not just talking about numbers. When we hear the death tolls coming out of Palestine, that each of us have a story, each of us have a place in Palestine, each of us are deeply connected to Palestine, and something that should be really reiterated as well. As Palestinians, we want nothing more than freedom. We want nothing more than to be sitting under the grapevines in our garden. This is a picture of my grandmother and my uncle in 1944. My dad's one of 9, there's loads of age gaps. And this is a picture of my grandma and my uncle, and then here is a picture of my grandmother and my dad actually sipping madamia there as well. And under the grapevines in our house in Jerusalem. And there's nothing more as Palestinians that we want is to have these photos of us, have these memories of us in our land, to have these lived experiences in our land. So in 2019, one of my last trips in Palestine, I was walking around the old city of Jerusalem. This is the oldest school in Jerusalem. It's centuries old. My grandfather went to this school, my father went to this school, I went to this school until I was 8. And here's a picture of my dad in this school. He's the kid just on the lowest of the ground here, underneath the teacher. And because of the age gap, the teacher is actually my auntie, his sister. Her name's Dalal, shout out to Dalal. And so this is my dad's class photo in the school. This is a photo of me in the school. I'm not going to say which one I was, bowl cut era. But this is the class photo of my class in the school. And then in 2019, on this trip, me and my dad were walking around the old city, and we had found out that this school, in literally the past few weeks of that trip, had been stolen by Israeli settlers and had now become a yeshiva, which is a religious school for settlers. And suddenly all those memories and knowing that the generation after me would not be going to this school, the reality of that sunk in. This picture as well, it wasn't a picture I'd ever intended on sharing. I actually don't know why I took it at the time, because it was quite an upsetting moment at that time. On this walk, we had just realized the school had been stolen. This is a picture of my dad walking past a childhood friend's home. He had obviously shared dinners in this home with his friend, and as kids growing up, this home is maybe 5 steps away from our home. It had recently been stolen by Israeli settlers. As you can see, they've littered it with their flags of settler colonialism. And my dad was incredibly emotional finding out that, you can't really see, it's a bit blurry, but he was actually very upset to find out this house had been stolen. And this is all part of the mass ethnic cleansing campaign of Palestine. And I'm focusing on Jerusalem now because it's the way in which I can comprehend it as being Palestinian from Jerusalem and articulate it in the best way that I can. So this is an old picture of the Western Wall, which is a really religiously significant place for the Jewish community. And as you can see, this picture is before Israel was created, before 1948. And you can see the Western Wall here, people praying. And you can see on this side, this is the back of Palestinian homes. Hundreds of Palestinian families were living next to the Western Wall, coexisting next to the Western Wall. And if we look at the next picture, this is a picture of the Western Wall in 1965. So again, we can see the Palestinian homes here, the Western Wall here, and we can see that you could probably fit about 7, 8 people, line them up between the gaps here between the Palestinian homes and the Western Wall. This is the Western Wall today. They've destroyed all the Palestinians' homes that were living there, and all those Palestinians who were living there were forced to become refugees. In 1967, they destroyed all those Palestinian homes, and those Palestinians became refugees on the other side of the apartheid wall in Abu Dis, and they were displaced. And this is all part of a campaign, again, to completely erase our existence, our memory from Jerusalem as Palestinians, to completely distort history. And these pictures, again, I never thought I'd be showing these pictures. These are pictures from my dissertation in university a few years ago. I remember showing it to my dissertation lecturer at the time, who was saying, what is this? This is just pictures of the floor. But if you allow me to explain, so Jerusalem is one of the oldest cities in the world, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. And these are old stone floors dating back over 1,000 years. And now these pictures I took from the Muslim and the Christian quarters in Jerusalem, which are predominantly inhabited by Palestinians. And just to understand as well, we have Christian, Muslim, Armenian, Ethiopian quarters of Jerusalem, not in a way to segregate, but in a way of which communities exist. And if you can see here, so the floor, parts of the floor have been stolen by the Israeli Jerusalem municipality and placed into the Jewish quarter to make the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem 5 times the size of any other quarter in Jerusalem. Essentially, it's a Jewish settler supremacist policy. And they've extended the size of the Jewish quarter. So we can see again the difference there in even the upkeep of the quarters as well, the apartheid of the quarters. And there's actually a word for this as well. The word for this is memoricide. It's a fundamental part of genocide, and it is the destruction of the memory, extermination of the past of a targeted people, of Palestinians. Again, these are just a few family photos. Again, my grandmother, my dad and his siblings in Jerusalem and Palestine. And again, as Palestinians, there's nothing we want more than to live free in our land, to be as kids playing underneath the grapevines of our grandmothers. And as Palestinians, there's nothing more we want than our freedom. And in the meantime, whilst I can't return to my country and take photos like these with my family, settlers are taking our place. And just to understand the scope of this, Israel invests billions into its settler colonialism, into specifically bringing settlers to Palestine. There's actually a whole government ministry called Aliyah, which is they invest billions into it. It's predominantly targeted for settlers from France, from Europe, from America, from Britain. For them to come and settle in Palestine on stolen land. The Israeli government will actually pay for the whole process as well, from the one-way flight to the accommodation to somewhere to live. They'll help you find a job. They'll even get you a car. And actually, I looked into it the other day. I just tried to apply for the hell of it, see what the process was like. There's absolutely no due diligence at all. All you have to do is claim that you're Jewish, and they'll do that for you. And also, they'll even offer to pick you up from the airport when you arrive in a taxi. And this is the plight of Palestinians right now. We're at a time where we're trying to exist as Palestinians, to merely exist, or in the meanwhile, settlers are taking our place. I just wanted to lastly touch on I feel like from this day forward, I can't openly speak on anything without talking about my friend Maysara. Maysara, his name is Dr. Maysara Al-Reyes. He was a doctor. I studied with him in London. We were close friends, and he got a Chevening scholarship, which, if anyone knows about Chevening, is you have to be incredibly intelligent, and you have to be incredibly intelligent to get a Chevening scholarship, which he was. And from knowing him, I also organized events with him. One was called Voices from Gaza, which is the event on this side as well, where him and a few other people who also had Chevening scholarships from Gaza spoke about their experiences. Maysara spoke about how he was a voluntary doctor, he was a voluntary medic during the Great Marches of Return. If anyone knows about the Great Marches of Return, it was a mass, peaceful, non-violent continuous protests that took place every single Friday from 2018 to 2019. It was one of the biggest mobilizations of civil society in history. Palestinians in Gaza protested every Friday for over a year, demanding their freedom, demanding their right of return. And Israeli snipers murdered thousands of them. They also had Israeli snipers along the border that were also implementing policies such as shooting to sterilize. And I'll never forget Maysara's speech in this event, where he had told us that Israeli snipers had a policy that was shoot to sterilize, which was to shoot in the private area of Palestinian protesters and to sterilize. And I feel like I have to repeat that every time and talk about Maysara, because he described it as an experience that changed his life. And there were people from that protest who became quadruple amputees. The tens of thousands of people had to have their limbs amputated because of Israeli snipers. And that was all from the Great Marches of Return in Gaza. Once Maysara left university, he then started to work for Doctors Without Borders. And he was actually living in London. He went back to Gaza just before October 7th to get married. And then we got the news 2 weeks ago that Maysara, he was in his family home alongside his mother, his father, his sisters, his nieces and nephews. When an Israeli airstrike hit their home, it was a multi-tiered building. Every single Palestinian family was murdered in that building. Maysara was murdered alongside all of his family. And then the only two brothers who were not at the house at that time heard about what had happened and had gone to the rubble of his home to rescue his body, to at least bury their family with dignity. And whilst the two brothers with their bare hands, this is one of Maysara's brothers, whilst they were trying to move the rubble with their own hands, the Israeli settler forces struck the home again and bombed the home again and murdered both of Maysara's brothers who were trying to rescue their bodies. This is one of the last photos that I took of Maysara. Every time I look at this photo, I just think, why did I bring him to Brighton? He really wanted to go to Brighton. I don't know why. But then also upon talking to him, and this is another Palestinian from Gaza we're also friends with, called Bahzat, he had just explained he had never seen a fun fair or like been on rides and stuff like that. And I just remember at that time it kind of really drilled home to me that there's a phrase in Arabic for Palestinians in Gaza, that Palestinians in Gaza are born dead. They know what their fate is. Their fate is sealed. And lastly, as well, I just wanted to talk. Is it 2 minutes? Okay. I'm just very worried. I'm gonna go over the time. But I just wanted to wrap up briefly on a call to action, because as important as these events are, action, especially at times like this, is always necessary. Now is the time to act. It's time to participate in direct action in all of its forms. It's time to raise hell. Do not allow those responsible for this genocide or those fanning the flames of it to have a single moment of normality or peace whilst they obliterate Gaza, whilst they starve over 2.3 million Palestinians, from the Tories in Downing Street to the Democrats in Washington or the DUP councillors in Belfast City Hall supporting genocide. Do not allow them a moment of peace. To the arms companies like Lockheed Martin, Elbit Systems, Boeing, and many others profiting off the spilled blood of over 20,000 Palestinians, do not allow them a moment of peace or normality. Join your local action groups, and especially here in Belfast, there are a few that I would recommend as well. There's Belfast for Palestine, Kaja Palestine, Mothers Against Genocide. Get involved. It's time to act. Now is definitely not the time to bend over backwards to the Israeli settler colony when supporting Palestine. I'm never really sure why people feel the need to do it. You don't have to denounce a specific type of racism before saying you support Palestine. Supporting Palestine means you are inherently anti-racist anyway. It goes without saying. You don't have to solely post charity donation pages or, for example, Jewish Voice for Peace, who do amazing work, but you don't have to only post JVP or a charity page to play it safe. They've slaughtered Palestinians for the last 75 years. They've colonized our entire country. They have over 10,000 of our people as political prisoners who they are explicitly torturing beyond our complete comprehension. I have family who are political prisoners. We've not heard from them since October 7th. And we know from a few that have been released in the past few days that the torture has escalated, especially against female Palestinian political prisoners. We don't have to self-censor ourselves. to an entity that continues to keep 7 million Palestinian refugees displaced. We can condemn them wholeheartedly and unequivocally. We don't need to hold back. We are literally watching genocide unfold because of this on-the-fence solidarity. Don't mince your words, don't hesitate, and act accordingly to how unjust this feels, not only in your heart, but in your conscience. Every single Palestinian, including me, and every Palestinian that I know, we all have family who are murdered, who are wrongfully imprisoned, who are missing, who are exiled, every single one of us. And it's exactly because of that Palestinians have a right to resist. It takes an obscene amount of ignorance and privilege to proclaim Palestinians should only resist peacefully. Once you've lived through your entire country being colonized, your ancestors massacred, your family imprisoned, try living a life under illegal military occupation and blockade, and then see if you'll condemn your right to fight back. Palestinians have been resisting continuously for 75 years. We've also tried peaceful. Boycotts were met with imprisonment. Artists were met with assassinations. Peaceful protests met with massacres. You support all Palestinian resistance or you're complicit in Israeli oppression. It's that simple. And I, for one, support Palestinian resistance by any and all means necessary. My people, my family deserve liberation and justice and to see their land decolonized. We deserve our land back. The world has dehumanized my people for the last 75 years. The occupation, the blockade, the pogroms, the massacres of Gaza were all allowed to happen and be the prerequisite for the genocide happening now. We all saw the signs, and we all have the choice to either idly stand by and watch this continue or to stand up and to stop it. Lastly, the Palestinian struggle is a struggle against settler colonialism, against racism, against sexism, against homophobia, against transphobia, against capitalism, and against classism. We will not see a free and decolonized Palestine whilst Tories are in power. We will not see a free Palestine without a free Kashmir, without a free and united Ireland, without deadly US sanctions being lifted off Cuba and Venezuela, without decolonization and self-determination for the Aboriginal First Nations peoples and all indigenous peoples still being colonized. We will not see a free Palestine whilst oil and gas companies view Native American blood as cheaper than oil, and we will not see a free Palestine whilst we do not act in the midst of a climate catastrophe. Our oppressors are united, so why aren't we? We need to stand up for all, or we might as well be standing with our oppressors. Everything must change, and allow Palestine to radicalize you. Palestine is freeing us. It's freeing us from the illusion that this world is free, fair, or just. There's still a fight to be fought, and a fight that requires all of us. And the last line, I just wanted to wrap up with a quote from Bell Hooks, which is, "Solidarity is not the same as support. To experience solidarity, we must have a community of interests, shared beliefs and goals around which to unite. Support can be occasional. It can be given and just as easily withdrawn. Solidarity requires sustained, ongoing commitment. Solidarity requires sacrifice." Thank you.
This one on, Mick, guy. That's all right, how's it going, folks? My name is Mark. I play music under the name Arborist. I've just got a couple of songs for you, and then you got a bit of a break to soak it all in. I had something else planned. It's the first song here, but then after Farrah's incredibly powerful and moving words, I thought I'd go for this one. And sure, Sweet Caroline I'll keep for another night anyway. So. It's when the ground starts to frost that I miss you the most. Oh, each swirling breath, your ghost. And I retreated into a dream, following a dark street. But it's when the roses stand tall that I don't even recall the sound of your voice at all. And I retreated into a dream, following a dark street. The seasons arrive and go. Oh, nothing survives. Well, I know, no. It's when the ground starts to frost that I miss you the most. Oh, each swirling breath, your ghost. And I retreated into a dream, following a dark street. The seasons arrive and go. Oh, nothing survives. Well, I know, no, no, no. Thank you. Thanks. Just play one more for you. Kind of in an unexpected turn of events, I'm going to play an old hymn, if you let me explain. Kind of in the last week or so, I was asked to do a version of this for a film, and so I've just been sitting for the last week, kind of doing different versions of it and trying to sync it to the what's going on screen, etc. And it's kind of it took on a secular air, and a lot of the brutality in it kind of rang true with me in the way that it's called "Were You There?" When they crucified our Lord, and it's kind of the words were almost taunting me, and when you're looking at all the current brutality on screen, and it seemed to be saying, "What are you doing about it?" And I think a lot of people are sort of feeling useless and not able to do something. So it kind of had a bit of an impact in that way with me. So I thought I'd play it here. Were you there when they crucified our Lord? Were you there when they crucified our Lord? How Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified our Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to a cross? Were you there when they nailed him to a cross? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to a cross? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they rolled away the stone? Were you there when they rolled away the stone? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they rolled away the stone? Were you there when they rolled away the stone? Thank you.
All right, take your seats, please. Wendy, Erskine. And the sick. Putting up a lane here. I hope you all spent your wages on the lovely prints and jumpers and books. No alibis are sending, is it 20% to Palestinian, aid for Palestinians? So that explains all the books at the front. And of course the merch is there. The merch is there. There's many boxes of merch. I want 180 jumpers sold tonight. Pink and black. Right. We're on the second half now. I don't have a lot to say. All I'm going to do is introduce the next set of readers, who are Asmaa Azaizeh, who's a Palestinian poet, performer and journalist based in Haifa. She's going to come on screen and read a poem. Then we'll have Leontia, Flynn, Patterson, And then the Palestinian poet and activist Mohammed El-Kurd, who's going to come on the screen too. And then at the end, we're going to have a couple of tunes from one of my favourite trad artists in Belfast right now, Múlú. So thank you all again, and I'll see you at the end.
Hello, Ireland. We are facing brutal policies of silencing voices, so thank you for giving me this space and time to raise it. In my sleep, I saw a stranger's finger push against my teeth. I heard the sound they made as they fell one by one. The Arabs say, if you saw teeth falling to the ground, that is death. If it was the front teeth, it would stop you from doing anything or speaking. And if all teeth fell away, your family will perish and you will survive them. I woke up to find my mouth full of caves. I screamed, but infinity sucked my broken scream. I uttered words, but my language was lost to the stones. I said, I don't mind, I shall be leaving with an empty mouth, but with a full heart. I went out and saw my name drowning and calling out for help. I extended my hand to him, but the wind rebuked me. No doubt you need a new name for a new era in which book pages are all white, our rivers are dyed with our thoughts. Revolution is a large shoe and our feet are small. My family are afloat on their backs, waving their way into oblivion. My father is hanging from the peg of absence, his golden tooth shrouded by the darkness of history, smiling as if life was only a joke. Our laughs fell and the joke became heavy. I prepared to mourn him when eloquence jumped into the boat of fear and was followed by the fledglings of hidden meaning. I wanted to say one thing, or even half a thing, like, what if? What if my father was alive? But my father kept dying on top of his death. I became a tree on a river bank, my roots cut off, my memories blue. I dreamt of my dreams falling out of my mouth, forming sandpits at the river's bed. The Arabs moved and left me with no language or meanings. Ancient wars left and others never happened. They left after their teeth too fell away and they were told they had neither bread nor blood in this place. One was eaten and the other curdled. This is the world whose skies were raised, whose mountains erected, whose children revolted for justice. Look at it. Here it is going by grieving over bridges that were never built but in its own imagination, its mountains laying flat on their stomachs, its children making the purring sound of a sawn cork tree. There is no one but me left on the river bank, a tree cut off from a tree. Countless generations have passed me by until the paintings from the walls of my mouth jumped out. I remembered a word from the stagnant past, and I was about to utter it. I was almost about to utter a third of it. I will probably not utter it. It was probably a mere thought. The world turned its neck around. Giant bodies prepared to get up, and my wet name with its big head looked over me. Since then, since thousands of years, I hear a long creak and the sound of the world's falling teeth.
I'm going to start with a poem by Fadwa Tuqan. I'm not going to pretend I knew as much about Palestinian literature as I might have done before this event. I'm very glad to have read an awful lot in the last few weeks, and I'm very grateful to the organisers. So just to echo the thanks for them. Fadwa Tuqan was born in 1917 and died in 2003, and was in her lifetime described as the Grand Dame of Palestinian poetry. She was the author of 8 collections and chronicled the sufferings of her people living under Israeli occupation and also the hardships faced by women in the male-dominated Arab world. I'll read her poem, My Sad City, and this translation is by A.M. El-Masiri, which is not a very common translation, I don't think. My Sad City, the day of the occupation, June 27th, 1967. The day we saw death and betrayal, the tide ebbed, the windows of the sky closed and the city held its breath. The day the waves were vanquished, the day the ugliness of the abyss revealed its true face, hope turned to ashes, and gagging on disaster, my sad city choked. Gone were the children and the songs. There was no shadow, no echo. Sorrow crawled naked in my city. With bloodied footsteps, silence reigned in the city, silence like crouching mountains, mysterious like the night, tragic silence, burdened, weighed down with death and defeat. Alas, my sad and silent city. Can it be true that in this, the season of harvest, grain and fruit have turned to ashes? Alas, that this should be the fruit of all that journeying. And I'll read 4 poems by Mahmoud Darwish from his collection of 1986, Fewer Roses. I think it was sort of breakthrough collection. Mick mentioned him in the introduction. As a poet, he was, by the time of his death, 15 years ago, the national poet of Palestine. He wrote more than 30 books of poetry. He was translated into 20 languages. And had won a large number of international awards. The village in which Mahmoud Darwish was born was wiped from the map in 1948. Edward Said, whose book on Palestinian representation, After the Last Sky, takes its title from one of the poems I'll read, wrote that Darwish was always trying to reassemble an identity out of the refractions and discontinuities of exile. The theme of homeland is central to Darwish's work and to the sequence of poems which I'll read. And they return again and again to different ideas of exile and belonging. The translations are by Caroline Forshey. I'm reading them out of sequence because for my own reasons, I suppose, really. So, the last train, let's just start with the train, actually. The last train has stopped. The last train has stopped at the last platform. No one is there to save the roses. No doves to alight on a woman made of words. Time has ended. The ode fares no better than the foam. Don't put faith in our train's love. Don't wait for anyone in the crowd. The last train has stopped at the last platform, but no one can cast the reflection of Narcissus back on the mirrors of night. Where can I write my latest account of the body's incarnation? It's the end of what was bound to end. Where is that which ends? Where can I free myself of the homeland in my body? Don't put faith in our train's love. The last dove flew away. The last train has stopped at the last platform, and no one was there. Earth presses against us. Earth is pressing against us, trapping us in the final passage. To pass through, we pull off our limbs. Earth is squeezing us. If only we were its wheat, we might die and yet live. If only it were our mother, so that she might temper us with mercy. If only we were pictures of rocks held in our dreams like mirrors. We glimpse faces in their final battle for the soul of those who will be killed by the last living among us. We mourn their children's feast. We saw the faces of those who would throw our children out of the windows of this last space, a star to burnish our mirrors. Where should we go after the last border? Where should birds fly after the last sky? Where should plants sleep after the last breath of air? We write our names with crimson mist. We end the hymn with our flesh. Here we will die, here in the final passage. Here or there, our blood will plant olive trees. I will slog over this road. I will slog over this endless road to its end until my heart stops. I will slog over this endless, endless road with nothing to lose but the dust which has died in me and a row of palms pointing toward what vanishes. I will pass the row of palms. The wound does not need its poet to paint the blood of death like a pomegranate. On the roof of neighing, I will cut 30 openings for meaning, so that you may end one trail only so as to begin another. Whether this earth comes to an end or not, we'll slog over this endless road, more tense than a bow, our steps be arrows. Where were we a moment ago? Shall we join in a while the first arrow, the spinning wind whirled us? So what do you say? I say I will slog over this endless road to its end and my own. And the last one. I belong there. I belong there. I have many memories. I was born as everyone is born. I have a mother, a house with many windows, brothers, friends, and a prison cell with a chilly window. I have a wave snatched by seagulls, a panorama of my own. I have a saturated meadow. In the deep horizon of my word, I have a moon, a bird's sustenance, and an immortal olive tree. I have lived on the land long before swords turned man into prey. I belong there. When heaven mourns for her mother, I return heaven to her mother. And I cry so that a returning cloud might carry my tears. To break the rules, I have learned all the words needed for a trial by blood. I have learned and dismantled all the words in order to draw from them a single word, home.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to read a short story from a short story called Love in Ramallah, which is from a book called The Book of Ramallah, and it's by Ibrahim Nasrallah, who is a poet, grew up in a refugee camp in Jordan, poet, novelist, short story writer, photographer, artist, who has the dubious double distinction, I think, of not only having won the Jerusalem Award for Culture and Creativity in 2012, but also having his fourth collection banned in Jordan for inciting dissension and passing misinformation on to future generations. If it wasn't so farcical, read his interview in The Guardian about that, where he expresses not only his confusion but also his terror at that banning. The translation of this story is by Mohammed Galini, who is a journalist as well as a translator, and I think rather beautifully currently works in air quality in the UK. The story is in three parts. In the first part, a woman turns up at the door of an elderly woman called Walid,
and wants to meet her nephew, Nassim. She actually wants to marry her nephew, Nassim. He is a former prisoner about whom a play has been written, and the woman says she will picket the house until Nassim agrees to marry her. In the second part of the story, Nassim is on a bus, and it's stopped at an IDF checkpoint. Everybody's taken off the bus, and soldiers say that they can't get back on and the bus cannot proceed until one of a teenage boy passenger kisses a teenage girl. The third part of the story I'm going to read from begins with Nassim bringing his aunt Walid roses. She asks him, is he not embarrassed to carry roses on the bus? He said, why would I be embarrassed? And he asks her in passing, has she never told her husband, Abu Walid, that she loves him in public? She says, I've never even told him in private. And then this happens. Under the midday sun, glancing through clouds in front of two almond trees that shaded the lower yard of her house, now destroyed, beneath a flock of house sparrows hovering above the damaged power lines, watching cautiously for the yard to be clear of kids, Walid gazed into the distance. She looked past the clutch of children playing in the dirt yard. There were fewer of them today than usual. Looking up at the towering sky, she saw 3 kites soaring. Then she turned her eyes to her neighbour's window, the pane punched out by a missile that went on to rip through the kids behind it. All were waiting for their mother to make them breakfast before going to school. Walid went back to looking into the distance. She could see the children playing. Today, they seemed to be playing with the kind of joy they felt the very first time they played. She didn't know what number they needed to make 2 teams to chase a ball around, so she carried on staring into the distance. The children's cries brought her back to earth. She swept her gaze swiftly among them until she settled at the far edge of the yard where Abu Walid sat, along with a group of men who were consumed in a conversation so familiar to her that she could probably guess every word. 150, maybe 200 meters was all that separated them, no more. A noise she knew well swung her attention to the end of the road. An army patrol, 4 jeeps roaring up the road towards her, choking the alley with their black smoke. Here they are again, occupying everything. Yassine's face swung into her line of sight, then disappeared. The clamour of the jeeps brought her back to their street. They were now next to her house, parked close to its northern side. But the children didn't stop playing. They carried on as if the place had never seen a soldier. There, above the wires, the caution that had set into the wings of the sparrows was noticeable. Walid returned her gaze to the far side of the yard. The men had stopped chatting as they sensed something was happening on the other side of the wall. They knew nothing of it, but were slightly reassured that the children were still playing. She saw Abu Walid waving at her from afar and waved back. The soldiers noticed their gestures. Yassine's face passed by again, but this time it didn't disappear. She saw him heading down the stairs towards the lower yard, and for a moment she envisaged the yard as it had always been, green and well kept. She could hear her voice flowing through her body like a river, rising from the depths of her heart, filling her lungs as she called Abu Walid. From the other side of the yard came his voice, as if he'd been waiting for her call for a long time. What is it? I love you, Abu Walid. I love you. The soldiers watched this old woman calling to her man before their eyes switched to the other side to see him say, "What? I love you," she said again. Abu Walid shook his head. He squinted a little, but his eyes shone with an unusual glimmer as he read the faces of his companions. He lifted his head, and for a moment it seemed as if the children had stopped playing and the sparrows didn't know which way to fly. As for the soldiers, they were holding their breath. Abu Walid realized that the whole world had stopped and was waiting for him. He looked to the far side of the yard where the woman, proud and tall like the pine, was waiting, and he called, "I love you, Walid." "What?" she responded, even though she had heard it loud and clear the first time. "I love you." And everything settled down. He observed the silence that his voice had created in the space. She got the message, loud and clear, he whispered to himself with a quiet joy as he returned to his seat. At the same time, the patrol leader shook his head in confusion. An old man, an old woman shouting, "I love you," at each other. Crazy fucking Palestinians. As if the pine tree within her suddenly grew higher and higher, Walid found herself feeling taller than any other day. And casting a compassionate eye on the other side of the yard, she watched as the patrol disappeared. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here, although virtually. I want to read 3 poems. 2 are mine and 1 by an Irish poet that I admire. So in 2014, 4 Palestinian boys were targeted by Israeli naval fire as they played soccer on a beach in Gaza. I wrote this poem called "No Moses in Siege" in their honor. Was it because there were no more graves in Gaza that you brought us to the beach to die? Was it because rubbling us in our houses like our cousins, like our futures, like our gods would be a bore? Was it because our cemeteries need cemeteries and our tombstones need homes? Was it because our fathers needed more grief? We were limbs in the wind, our joy breaking against the shore, soccer ball in between our feet. We were soccer in between their feet, no place to run, no Moses in siege. Waves stitched together, embroidered, unwalkable, indivisible, passage implausible. On most days we weep in advance. Here we know 2 suns, Earth's friend and white phosphorus. Here we know 2 things, death and the breaths before it. What do you say to children for whom the Red Sea does not part? What do you say to children for whom the Red Sea does not part? Thank you. This next poem is called, we've been talking a lot about violence. There's been a lot of conversations about violence in the past few weeks. So I wanna offer this intervention, this poem called 15-Year-Old Girl Killed While Attempting to Kill a Soldier with a Nail File, or Context. Context. Fruit knife to a firearm. He was in her throat. 15-year-old girl denounced, "Violence is not children taking on dragons. For me, it has always been apologies, running to catastrophe with context, commissioning compassion, turning heroes into human. This is a refuted revolution." Television said her brother was a martyr, but martyrs go with intent. He went, bullet to the head, from fist to flounder. Context is hand in his pocket. Toy guns. I told the people that day, disclaimer, that girl should not have found her rage in the kitchen drawer. She was reaching for crayons. Solidarity often is a refuted revolution. I held my arsenal. People who give excuses for executions fear the rifle more than they fear the reason. I put her in tool, girl to their gaze, angel to their accusations. Otherwise, fruit knife becomes the villain, despite context. Context, they want cats declawed. They want knocked doors unanswered. They want the other cheek. terrorist avenges, headlines delusional, are all heads equal? Is a soldier's heart equal to her brother's? I'll hold my arsenal. When they ask me the next time, I'll say God held her hand. Thank you. The last poem I'm going to read is called Soldiers by Padraig Fiach. It's an amazing poem that my friend Oisin Davis introduced me to. And I found the resemblance with the Palestinian cause in this particular poem, and Kenny, particularly when he's talking about how children in colonial context are transformed into men. This is called Soldiers. The altar boy marches up the altar steps. The priest marches down. Get up now and be a soldier, says the nun. To the woman after giving birth, get up now and march, march, be a man. And the men are men, and the women are men, and the children are men. Mother carried a knife to work. It was the thorn to her rose. They say she died with her eyes open in the French hospital in New York. I remember those eyes shining in the dark. Slum hallway the day after I left the monastery, eyes that were a feast of welcome that said, yes, I'm glad you did not get stuck there. Would you mind if I went to prison rather than war? No, for Ireland's men all went to prison. At the bottom of a canyon of brick, she cursed and swore, you never see the sky. A lifetime after, just before I go to sleep at night, I hear that Anna Magnani voice screaming me deaf, no, no, you're not to heed the world. In one swift sentence, she tells me to yield but to forbear. In one swift sentence, she tells me not to yield but to forbear. Go to prison but never stop fighting. We are the poor and the poor have to be soldiers. You're still a soldier. It's only that you're losing the war. And all the wars are lost anyway. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here, but it's also so bittersweet. It's been such a beautiful evening. I don't even know how the fuck I'm supposed to speak after everyone that spoke, because these are all so talented and words are not my thing. But it's very bittersweet to be here because I didn't think we'd be here a month and a half ago. I didn't think we'd still be fighting for the same thing that we were out in the streets fighting for after October 7th and before that, indeed. But what I can do is play you a couple of tunes and sing a couple of songs. I don't usually play the flute unaccompanied, it's not that common, but I'll play you a set of tunes. The first one is a barn dance, and then the second one is a tune that I wrote called The Olive Tree, so for obvious reasons. Thank you very much. Gur míle maith agam. I'm going to sing you a song now. It's called The Kailenas Condelu. It's a song in the Irish language, and if ever there was proof that oppression does not win, it's the fact that I'm sitting here singing songs in Irish for you guys. You! Yeah. So, Kailenas Condelu, it means the girl from County Louth. I just want to say thanks, everyone. Give Mick a big round of applause because this has been such an incredible night. And I just would like to thank everyone, of course, at the Black Box and everyone here for coming out. I'm just going to try a short part of a Palestinian song that I've learned. So hopefully I will get the words wrong, but just no one build me up on it afterwards. I don't feel as bad. But it's called Yama Mwil Il Hawa. Yama Mwil Il Hawa, Yama Mwil
Hawkman Adelphi, when she died, was she there one when self la manata, with self la manata. So go find we Father, need your man will ilha, your man will and Arbek and Azurwala, Hawkman Adelphi, your man will ilha, your man will and Arbek and Azurwala, Hawkman Adelphi, your man will ilha, your man will and Arbek and Azurwala, Hawkman Adelphi, your man will ilha, your man will Arbek and Azurwala, Hawkman Adelphi.
Thank you very much. Jeremy Maga.
Fucking hell, that was class. I was just going to listen to Múlú and Arborist. Yeah, it's been. We're going to have a wee bit of a segue here. Unexpected segue. We've got some raffle tickets. We're going to get straight into it. So Stephen Miller is going to come up and he's going to give out some prizes. So welcome, Stephen, to the stage.
Aharja, Kuramila, I want to thank you and also apologise because everyone that I badgered and bullied into buying a ticket, like your money's going to medical aid for Palestinian people, and we like the raffle tickets alone have raised like over 600 quid. So Kuramila. Yeah, and we won't have time to go and hand out every prize because it'll be like a primary school end of year prize giving day. So I'm going to read out the names of the winners. Come see me after. Yeah, and I want to thank every artist, musician, organisation, and individual that donated a prize. There's 17 prizes. So thanks so much. So without further ado, winner of the Grateful Bread Dinner for Two, ticket 234, Mick Collins. Winner of signed copy of Close to Home. I hear that's a good read.
Brilliant book.
Gareth Hughes. Winner of the Landless album, ticket 94, Kerry Gray. Winner of a 1-hour massage from Janie Doherty, Neith Kelly. This is the prize I wanted to win and couldn't rig it enough. Winner of the stained glass watermelon by Teresa Coyle up in Derry is Liz Kelly, ticket 141. We got so many prints from the artists at Us Folk that we put them in 2 bundles, so they're 2 prizes. So the first winner is ticket 577 from Ricky O'Raw and 171 Darren McQuaid. Okay. We have a signed LP from Problem Patterns. That's ticket 21, Stephen Sexton. It's not rigged. Okay, this is another great prize. A gift voucher for the Sunflower. Ticket 196, Sophia McKeever. Next prize, ticket 572, Marianne Mooney wins a print by Joanne Coates. There's so many to get through. Ticket 238, Faye Tierney has won an American Bar t-shirt. We only have one t-shirt, so I hope it fits. I put in 2 paintings. Maybe you want them, maybe you don't. But ticket 26, Romy McKeever, who works here. Well done, Romy. And the second one is Stephen O'Hara, ticket 35. We've got a signed print from artist Rob Hilkin. That's Chris Kelly 139. We're nearly there, I promise. A signed photo from artist Marina Vitiglione, and that's ticket 40, Hannah Marsh. And then the last one, it's a gift voucher for Ordo, which was donated by Susanna Wilson, and it goes to ticket 214, Shannon Patterson. A hard check, Durham, you my other.
Well, some of us are happy, some of us are disappointed. I'm not going to say too much because I feel like everything that needed to be said was said. I'm just very grateful for all these for coming. I want to take the opportunity to thank people individually, people who helped organize this event, which literally only came about maybe 2-3 weeks ago off the back of an email. Actually, it was off the back of an Instagram post. And I replied and said, I'll fucking do something. Little did I know. And so I want to thank Anna Leishing for sure. Fucking solid. Roisin Davis, another absolute legend. Hannah Kenny. Stephen Connolly for the incredible posters he's done for all the events that we're doing. Manuela Moser, as always. I'm liking this. This is good, actually. Sinead Gleeson, who helped us organise in Dublin. Donnie Denton, who organised in Cork. Elaine Feeney, who organised with Manuela Moser in Galway. Just keep. All right, okay. And of course, my amazing girlfriend, Ellen Ray, who's worked very hard on this. We both of us have, and yeah, it's just class. Yeah, yes, okay, that's okay. Andrew Comiskey from the Wallabies. Erskine, you know. Helen McDonald, Skullduggery. Sasha White, Susie Deegan, sorry, out the front. Man on the door, Stephen Miller, with an impeccable raffle. 400 quid was raised in that raffle tonight. So 600 quid. And I hope there's more jumpers sold in there. Right, who we got? Yes, and now I actually want to take this opportunity to thank Irish artists for Palestine, particularly Brandy and Claire Loughlin. And the work they're doing is unbelievable. Like for you, Sue, for people who don't know and those watching, the many thousands of people watching live online, Irish Artists for Palestine is a coalition of artists who are involved in organising an All-Ireland programme of solidarity events in response to the genocidal attack and siege on Gaza and the ongoing occupation of Palestine. Basically, artists from across Ireland have been taking upon themselves to organise gigs, art exhibitions, film screenings, stand-up comedy nights, theatre shows, literary events, fundraisers, all under the auspices of Irish Artists for Palestine. They're a very, very small team, and they're doing unbelievable work. It's actually insane. Like I don't think anything like this is happening anywhere else, at least not on this scale. You think about tonight, while this is happening, close to 13,000 people are in the 3 Arena in Dublin right now for the gig for Gaza. Mary Wallopers, Lankham, Damien Dempsey and Lisa O'Neill are there right now playing music, singing songs for Palestine. As for our own series of events, Irish Writers of Palestine, Irish Writers for Palestine, we've been told that this event in Belfast was the fastest selling in the history of the black box. Unbelievable. And this day next week, on the 5th of December, we're going to Dublin to Vicar Street, one of the most legendary music venues in Ireland. And there's 1,000 tickets we have to sell. We've sold about 3/4, about 750 tickets we've sold for a fucking literary event. Mental. Sally Rooney and Blind Boy have nothing to do with it. People want to hear poems. But then we'll go to Cork, and then we're going to Galway, doing events like this. We've got unbelievable writers, Mike McCormick, Elaine Feeney, Claire Louise Bennett, and Donald Rand, all sorts of people. And then on the 15th of December, we're actually going to cross the water to London, where they've stepped up. They've organised their own event, which will include readings from Lucy Caldwell, Keith Ridgway, Megan Nolan, Brian Dillon, Rachel Conley, and Susanna Dickey. So the diaspora hasn't forgot, and they're going to do their own thing over there. All proceeds are going to go to medical aid for Palestinians as well. Finally, and I say I'm not going to say too much, I want to thank the readers and musicians, Anna Burns, Stephen Sexton, Wendy, Erskine, Arborist, Leontia, Flynn, Glenn Patterson, and Múlú for putting on this show. When we set out to organise these events, we knew we had to go big to find any kind of impact. Each of these readers stepped up to the mark regardless of any potential risk, which there always is with these things, and we're incredibly grateful for it. I also want to thank our Palestinian readers, Asmaa, Azaizeh, Mohammed, El-Kurd, and Farrah, Koutteineh. It's been an incredible honour to hear them read and speak tonight. Thank you for being here with us and for the dignity with which you carry yourselves and your stories. Well, I don't have anything else to say that hasn't already been said, really, other than I think everything that the Irish Writers for Palestine has done over the last few weeks and the massive outpouring of support for the events, I think speaks to the growing sentiment we're seeing across Ireland. People have been galvanised. They're taken to the streets in massive numbers. And it's important that that energy continues, that we keep fighting, keep protesting, keep boycotting Israeli goods, and keep holding our government and elected representatives to account. There's a temporary ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, if you can call it that. People are still getting snatched from their homes left, right, and centre. But it's important for us to sustain this momentum, to keep pressurising, and to call on the International Criminal Court to hold the Israeli state to account for the crimes they've committed. They've acted with impunity for far too long, on too many occasions, and it's about time they answered for their policies of collective punishment on the Palestinian people. There can't be a free Palestine until the blockade is ended and the Israeli apartheid system is dismantled. Until then, we'll march forward, we'll keep going, and we'll keep platforming Palestinian voices in whichever way we can. Keep resisting. Go la mila mai agat. A free Palestine.